Hello and welcome to today's video. One of my subscribers was like, I want to see more cheeky checkmates. So today I have prepared a very cheeky checkmate for you, and you will be able to give it to your opponent if you're playing the black pieces. So let's see what it's all about. For it to work, your opponent needs to play d4 as a first move, which is a very popular move, so you will get a lot of opportunities to try this trap. If you're just playing a normal game here, typical responses include d5 or knight to f6, and you will get into a lot of standard games in Queen's Gambit perhaps, or some sort of Indian variation, or many others, and these are both really good moves. However, if you want to try this particular trap, you need to play the Englund Gambit, which is the move e5. Overall, not a very good move, like most gambit moves, but the point of a gambit is that you want to quickly gain an attack, and this is what I'm going to show you today. So in gambits you give away pieces or pawns in order to gain a lead in development, meaning you get your pieces out quicker than your opponent, who is busy taking up your material. So here white continues by taking the pawn, which is the best move in this position anyways. So they are not feeling like any trap will be played on them, because they're just playing the correct moves. Here, on move 2 and 3, you need to play queen to e7 and knight to f3. And you really have an option of choosing which one do you play first. It depends on what story you want to sell to your opponent. Playing knight to c6 tells your opponent you want to develop in a more standard way. You are just developing knights, which is something you should be doing anyways at the beginning. So that's one way to go about it. And then playing queen to e7 tells your opponent, basically, I want to win my pawn back, and I'm really keen on it, that's why I'm bringing the queen out. Either way, your opponent will probably develop their knight in order to protect their pawn. So knight to f3 is what you most likely will see. And then you follow up with the other of the two moves, depending on which you played on move 2. You follow on move 3 by making sure both your knight and your queen are on the proper squares. c6 and e7 for the queen. And now you have two attackers on the pawn. So again, you will take it unless your opponent does something about it, because they only have one defender. So what other piece can defend this pawn? That would be the bishop that is currently on c1, the dark squared bishop, which can go to f4. So now again, this pawn is defended twice and attacked twice, so you can't really take it. What you can do though is continue attacking, and that's really what you want to be doing in gambits. So if you've already sacrificed a pawn or two, you want every move you make to add pressure to your opponent and to add a threat, so that they don't get a chance to develop properly. So in this position you play queen to b4, giving your opponent a check, also attacking that bishop, which is not protected by anything where it's currently standing, and also attacking that pawn. So triple threat. Clearly white will have to deal with the check. But if they play a careless move like, let's say, knight going to d2, you will simply take the bishop. So if your opponent is paying attention, they probably would play that move bishop back to d2, defending the check, also saving the bishop and attacking the queen, which seems like a really good move, and it is one. And here you play queen captures on b2. So now you've continued attacking, you pose a new question, a new threat to your opponent, which is, I will take your rook, which is a very important piece obviously, on a1. So again, your opponent is not really getting a chance to hit their stride. They need to react to your threat. And what looks like a really good move for white is to attack your bishop. To use their bishop to attack your queen. Notice that that bishop is protecting the rook diagonally, so you can't capture anymore because you will lose your queen. So it looks like your queen is not really trapped, but your attack has ended. And now you bring another piece to the attack, which is your bishop, going again to that b4 square. Because the bishop is sort of pinning the other bishop to the king, that bishop cannot capture the queen. Basically, it cannot move anywhere on this diagonal because it is pinned to the king, meaning it cannot move because on this plane it's protecting its own king from your bishop. So your queen is indirectly protected by this move. It was attacked here and it would be taken if you do nothing, but now it cannot be taken. And you basically have added a second attacker to that bishop, which is only protected by the knight. So a logical move for white would be to play queen to d2 in order to, again, equalize the number of defenders and attackers of the bishop. Here you proceed by taking the bishop, and white takes the bishop back, thinking basically this attack is over. These three pieces protect each other really nicely. The knight is protected by the rook, the queen is protected by the knight, the rook is protected by the queen. So everything looks amazing for black, and it looks like you can't really add another attacker. You're very underdeveloped as black. But you have checkmate. So queen to c1. And that will be the end of the game. All of a sudden, the game has finished because white was so busy dealing with all these threats that they forgot about the only square that puts the king in any danger. The king looked very safe a couple of moves ago, but by giving up material in other parts of the board, you managed to convince white to leave that square for your queen, and the game is over. So that is the ideal scenario in which this game could end. And I checked the stats, about 7% of the games in this position and in this checkmate. So a lot of your opponents will make the necessary moves for you to attain a really nice checkmate. And I wish you all the luck in putting your opponents to the test with this very, very cheeky gambit, which starts with a really bad move, but then you keep threatening till the end and don't let them breathe until they crack. Now, I would like to go through a few other scenarios which might happen as you play along. First of all, if your opponent makes other moves here, obviously a move like that could happen. So here the opponent gives up the pawn, you might take it or you might develop something else, but the point is the trap will not happen. But if they keep playing along, I already explained to you what would happen if they're careless here and forget to bring the bishop back and forget to defend it. So if they play either knight or a pawn forward, you will just capture the bishop. More interestingly, if you see an opponent playing this move, queen to d2, that's a little bit more challenging because they are defending the bishop and they're protecting from the check. However, here they don't have enough to save themselves from your queen coming to b2. Here already you're in a very good position. So if they make this move here, in order to save the rook, you can't give the checkmate that I just discussed, because the bishop has not left the board as in the previous example. So you can't straight go for the win, but you go for a very strong move, which is bishop to e4. To reinforce that idea, in our main line, the bishop here pins the other bishop, if you remember a couple of moves ago, and it can't move and can't capture the queen, and here you're actually pinning the queen. So that queen will be lost no matter what white plays the next move. You will be able to use your bishop to take the queen, because the queen cannot leave this diagonal since it is protecting the king. So already, if they play this move, you know that you're in very good shape, and there is not that much that they can do. If, again, white plays the better move that we use in our classic scenario, and you manage to reach this position, they might actually realize that queen to d2 is like going to lead to a funny checkmate on c1 if they keep pushing. So they might take here, they might take your bishop. In which case you simply take back, and again you're not going to win the game in 8 moves, but what you're going to do is have an extremely powerful attack on this c2 square, which is a gateway for your knight to give a nice fork to the king and the rook. So you will be leading by a lot again, making this gambit full of tricks. It's not just one line in 8 moves, and then if it doesn't work, you're lost. There are many variations in which you can still have a decent, pleasant game where you're far ahead. So we have looked at some examples of what to do when white reaches that position. But what do we do if we don't want to lose as white? That will be the last part of the video. So what to do when you see that your opponent is trying the Englund Gambit and you feel like you're playing the best moves, but you know that if you reach this position, like, you're in really deep trouble. Let's flip the board and think that we're white for a second. So now I'm going to ask you a question. Can you find a good move for white here? A move that will not only not lose the game, but actually will put us in a really good position if we were the white pieces and black was being cheeky with that gambit, trying to win quickly. I'll pause the video, give you a chance to think, and then I will show you the best move. Alright, so what the best move here is part of a bigger point that I want to make, which is that even if things look scary in chess, sometimes you need to objectively assess them and forget about kind of the story that your opponent was trying to sell you with all these threats and all these logical looking moves. So we know that the logical move, bishop to c3, loses. We saw how this happens in numerous ways. But a great move here is actually to move our knight forward. It doesn't look like it threatens the queen, but the queen isn't threatening anything anyways. So by moving this knight, we protect our rook with our queen. And if you look at objectively the board, we have the same amount of pieces and pawns, but we have managed to develop a lot more pieces than our opponent, who hasn't developed almost anything. And we can use our next few moves to kick out their queen. So here, if they see this move, they already know that you are not going to fall for the trap. So I think that, yeah, it gives me as much pleasure playing that move against my opponent as giving them the checkmate on c1 as black, because it just shows that you're prepared for anything. So after you play this move, most likely they will try to keep on the attack. If they play a passive move that has nothing to do with what's going on, you have the opportunity to chase the queen, and the way to chase it out is by putting your rook on the same line as the queen. Now it can't go backwards, it cannot capture that pawn, so the only move it could play is to come here, and then you can further kick it out. So they probably would try something more aggressive, like bringing a knight here forward, instead of that silly h6 non-move that I kind of showed you. Or the bishop here. And again, if they do that, you need to see what threats they're making. For example, if they play the knight here, a very good move to respond to that is to see what this knight is threatening. It is threatening c2. So if you don't pay attention, you might lose that pawn. Let's say you play a silly move. That knight sacrifices itself because it gives a check that the king cannot escape, so the only way to defend would be to give up your queen. Obviously black has managed to trick you if that happens. So it doesn't look very obvious how to defend that pawn, and the best way to do it would be to bring your knight to d4, seeing that it can go backwards and defend that pawn. And from here on you can proceed after that with your usual idea of kicking out the queen, which is what you need to do. So yeah, if you do a less optimal defense, for example rook to c1, then you run the risk of their knight taking on a2, and basically the game will be kind of equal. But with this move, you're just showing them that you're in the driving seat from now on. If they start coming with the bishop, again, you can start kicking out the queen. and it will be very difficult for them to maintain any sort of advantage over you, because you will constantly make moves that develop you, making them make a million moves with the queens, I'm sorry, and you always have this threat that with one move you can attack this c7 square, which will lead to a fork of the king and the rook with your knight. So overall, as white, you will win or be in a better position to win games if you remember to not go for the immediate queen threat here, but for the knight move. So it's kind of a double gambit. Up to here, it is white soaking and inviting more pressure, and if it jumps like the counterattack too early, white will lose. But if you play the calm and collected solid move knight to c3, you will be able to win those games. And that's the trickiness of the Englund Gambit. Let me know what you think. Let me know when you succeed to pull one off on your opponents or to defend really nicely as white. I'm looking forward to your comments. So hope you enjoyed that video. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and please spread the good word about this channel. And I will see you at the next one. Bye!